Hello, welcome to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, where it is all about helping amazing physicians just like you create a wealthy life free from burnout and with the financial security to practice medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Elisa Zhang. Hello, and welcome back to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. It feels like it's been a little while since I recorded a podcast episode, since I batched a whole bunch of episodes before my winter travels over the holidays. My husband and I spent 2 epic weeks in New Zealand. It was an amazing trip. We had a lot of adventure. We did things like rafting down a river, watching the glowworms, swimming with dolphins, ice climbing on a glacier, and a scenic helicopter ride. I really went all out on the activities on this trip. We also got in plenty of hiking and got to see Hobbiton, which was super cute, and I really enjoyed it. If you're an outdoors person, I definitely recommend New Zealand. I could talk about travel probably all day, but this podcast isn't about travel. However, I mentioned the traveling because that's what I spend my money on. That's what brings me joy. I love to travel and I love the experience of travel. And so I have a hefty travel budget. And I want to encourage you to spend money on what brings you joy. And one of those things may be living in a beautiful house, which is the topic of today's episode. The largest amount of money you'll ever spend on a single purchase is probably when you buy real estate. Now, if you're a real estate investor, that may not be your personal residence, especially if you're into like buying apartment buildings. But if you're not a real estate investor, then your personal residence may be the largest single purchase you ever make. I suppose it's also possible that you may spend more buying into your private practice, but you get the idea. The average home price in the United States is around $420,000 in 2024. In high cost of living areas, the average single family house can be over $1 million. Many physicians buy a home without understanding the true cost of home ownership. A thought that many people have is that rent is throwing away money, and if your mortgage is less than your rent, then you should buy. There may even be family members or friends who tell people this and encourage people to buy. The truth is, there is a lot of cost to home ownership that people don't consider, including the cost of selling the property if you end up moving for a new job or for any other reason. In episode 48 of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, I talked a lot about things to consider regarding whether or not to buy a home. In today's podcast, I'm going to specifically address the cost of home ownership and how to calculate how much you can comfortably spend on purchasing your next home. If you are able to buy your home in cash without touching your investments earmarked for retirement or other financial goals, that pretty much means you can afford your home. Congratulations! Unfortunately, that's not the case for most people, or at least many people. Most people, especially for their first home purchase, will get a mortgage. When it comes to knowing how much you can spend on a home, whether it's a condo, townhouse, or single-family house, you'll want to know whether you qualify for a mortgage, and if you do, the amount of mortgage you would qualify for. In order to determine this amount, lenders have specific criteria and look at multiple factors. The first thing a lender looks at is income level and stability of that income. One thing we have going for us physicians is that we are looked at as a favorable profession for income stability. Physicians can qualify for a mortgage with a signed employment contract even before starting the job. That being said, if you recently started your own private practice, lenders will likely want to see your last 2 years of income from your business prior to giving you a loan. Other important criteria are your debt-to-income ratio and your credit score. The amount of money you have for down payment can also be a factor, but there are physician mortgages where you can potentially have a 0 down payment. Lenders will review your current savings and assets to ensure that you can cover the closing cost and have some cash reserves. When you're ready to purchase a home, it's advisable to get pre-approval from at least one lender before you start looking at properties. If you're unsure about your credit worthiness, it's worthwhile to review your credit report, calculate your debt-to-income ratio, and look at your credit score. Your debt-to-income ratio compares your income to your debt obligations. To calculate your debt-to-income ratio, first get a copy of your credit report. You can get your credit report for free at www.annualcreditreport.com. Review your credit report for any inaccuracies. If you find them, you'll want to get them corrected before you apply for a mortgage or any other loan. The next step you want to do is add up your monthly payment obligations. Go through your credit report and add up the minimum monthly payment listed for each credit card, auto loan, student loan, and any other loan that's listed. Include any court-ordered payments like child support or alimony. If you are applying with a spouse, include the monthly payments listed on their credit report as well. I should also say that there are 3 different credit reports from the 3 different credit reporting agencies. Usually the information on them will be pretty similar, if not exactly the same. So you can probably just do this with one of your credit reports, but it's a good thing to check all 3 to make sure that there are no errors. The next step is to calculate your total annual income. Your lender will likely ask for your most recent pay stub and probably also your W-2s or 1099s from the last 2 years. Gather these documents and use them to calculate your gross monthly income, meaning your income prior to any deductions. That means deductions for taxes, Social Security, Medicare, retirement contributions, the premiums for your health insurance, etc. If you are applying with your spouse, get your spouse's income information as well if they work. Calculate your debt-to-income ratio by taking your total monthly debt payments and divide by your gross monthly income. Most lenders require a debt-to-income ratio of 36% or less. Some will lend up to 43%. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau advises keeping your mortgage debt to less than 35% of your income. Because physicians are typically in relatively high income tax brackets, I would highly advise keeping your mortgage debt to less than 20% of your income. Consider that employed physicians typically pay anywhere between 20 and 42% of their gross income to taxes. 20% would be for a married physician filing jointly who makes $200,000 a year, lives in a state without income taxes, and whose spouse doesn't have an income. The 42% tax bracket applies to a single physician paying in the top federal income tax bracket who lives in California, which has the highest state income taxes in the United States. The average physician is probably paying around 30% of their gross income in taxes. If you're putting 20% of your gross income towards building wealth, like retirement and paying down your student loans, and 30% to taxes, that's already 50% of your gross income. If you were to put 35% of your gross income towards your mortgage, you would only have 15% of your income left for all your other expenses. You would literally be spending more on your mortgage than all your other expenses combined. In fact, you'd be spending more than double on your mortgage than all your other expenses combined. That's certainly a recipe for being house poor. This just goes to show that even if they'll loan you the money, it doesn't mean that you should take it all. The next thing to look at is your credit score, which will not only determine if you can get a loan, but also what interest rate you would qualify for. These days, many credit card websites will show you your credit score when you log into your online account. You can also get your FICO score at websites like Credit Karma. Each lender will have a different credit score requirement for giving you a mortgage. For government-backed FHA loans, the absolute minimum credit score is 500, though to qualify for a 3.5% down payment program, you'll need a credit score of at least 580. To get the lowest interest rate, you'll run a credit score over 790 or 800, depending on the lender. These are the factors that will go into how much of a loan you can secure in order to purchase your home. But again, just because you qualify to borrow a certain amount doesn't mean you should. The next step to determining how much home you can comfortably afford is looking at all the other costs that come with both buying and owning a home. Besides a down payment, you want to have an idea of how much additional cash to have on hand for expenses associated with the purchase of the home. You'll want to estimate your monthly expenses to maintain the home and work this into your spending plan before you buy. Let's look at the one-time cost first. Before you purchase any property, you'll want to have a property inspection completed to look for any possible large expenses that may happen after you purchase the property. A property inspection may cost anywhere between $300 and $1,000, depending on the size and location of the property. The initial inspection may discover some issues that you'll want to get another inspection by someone more specialized. For example, the general home inspector may look at the electric box and recommend an electrician come to take a look. I personally think it's a good idea to get a roofer to look at the roof, since I've had general inspectors who said a roof was fine that needed to be replaced relatively soon after I bought the property. If you have a well or septic tank, you'll want specialized inspectors for those things. When you buy a property, there will be closing costs, which can add up to 3 to 5% of the home's price. This is paid at closing. If you're in a buyer's market, it's possible you could negotiate for the seller to cover some of the closing costs. It may be possible for some of the closing costs to be included in the mortgage. Closing costs include title insurance, taxes, prepaid expenses, and appraisal fees. When you buy your home, there may be some things you want to change even before you move in. It's much easier to paint an empty house than one that's been moved into that has a bunch of furniture and stuff in it. There may be other issues you want to address before moving in as well. I scheduled my mold remediation to be completed right after closing before we moved in when I bought my current house. I wasn't going to move into a house that actively had mold in it. Other upfront expenses include home decor elements like window treatments. The owners of my house took all the curtain rods with them when they left, so I had to replace all the curtain rods. Depending on your situation, you may also want some new furniture. There's also the moving expense to actually move into your new home. These expenses can add up to thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, and you want to be prepared. Now, let's run through all the monthly and ongoing cost of home ownership. Your mortgage and payments will likely include the cost of property taxes and home insurance, though it's possible with a large down payment that you could elect for these to not be included in your monthly mortgage payment. Property taxes vary depending on the location. There are regions of this country that have very low property taxes and other places where there's very high property taxes in comparison to the value of the property. In many states, property tax is based on the purchase price of the property. However, the amount that the property tax can increase by year varies greatly. Some states, like California, have a cap on how much property taxes can increase each year. In California, that cap is 2% per year for the current homeowner, which is really great for Californians because some of their properties do appreciate at much higher rates than 2%. But that only applies to a current homeowner and not someone who newly buys the property. This also means that you can't necessarily use the amount that the current owner pays in property taxes to determine the property taxes you'll pay after you purchase the home. If the seller lived in their home for many years where there was high appreciation, but their property tax increases were capped, you will likely end up paying a much higher property tax based on the purchase price that you paid for the property. You may pay the previously assessed property tax for the first year or a few years of ownership, but eventually you're likely to pay based on your purchase price, whatever you paid for the home. Where I live, property taxes generally increase every 3 years when the county routinely sets a new value for all the single-family houses and other properties. Home insurance costs vary by location, home value, materials used for the home's construction, and other risk factors. With global warming and more extreme weather conditions, people have been seeing their home insurance rates increase dramatically depending on where they live. Talk to an insurance broker to get a ballpark idea of what home insurance will run for the properties that you're considering to purchase. Most home insurance policies do not include coverage from floods. Flood insurance is sold through a national insurance program. If you have any flood risk, you'll want to find out the cost of flood insurance as well. If you buy a home with less than 20% down payment, you may end up paying private mortgage insurance, abbreviated PMI. PMI insures the lender in the case that you default on the loan. It protects the bank, not you. You don't get any benefit from it. Doctor mortgages waive the PMI. If you don't have a 20% down payment for your home, consider getting a doctor mortgage. This only applies to your primary home, You can't use it for a second home or vacation home. Depending on the type and location of the property you're purchasing, there may be homeowner association fees. HOA fees can range from something small, like $50 a month, to several hundreds of dollars a month. HOA fees may cover things like trash service, security, landscaping, and snow removal. If you're buying a condo, HOA fees will cover maintenance for the common areas and shared housing elements like the roof. It's also possible that the HOA will require one-time assessments for major projects, like replacing the roof. This means that after you purchase the condo, at any point, the HOA may say that you need to pony up X amount of thousands of dollars to contribute to the new roof for the property. If you're unlucky, that could be within a few years of buying your condo, so it's something to consider. Another monthly cost is your utilities. As a renter, some of your utilities may have been included with your rent. As a homeowner, you're likely to pay for electric, natural gas, and internet. You'll either pay for city water and sewer, or you'll pay to upkeep a well and septic tank. During your home inspection process, you'll want to get a good idea of the life expectancy of your well and septic tank, since these can be big ticket items to replace. Which leads to other home maintenance. When you rent, if something breaks down, the landlord or owner fixes it. As a homeowner, you'll pay for all the costs to maintain and upkeep your new home. Trash removal will either be paid by you, your HOA, or be included in the taxes that you pay your city. Lawn care and snow removal may be covered by your HOA, but if not, it'll be up to you to decide whether or not to pay for it to be professionally done, or if you plan on taking care of it yourself. When a household appliance breaks down, it'll be up to you to pay the cost to repair or replace it. The same is true for your hot water tank, your furnace, and your air conditioning. Then there are bigger ticket items like your roof. Depending on the exterior of your home, you may need to paint every 5 to 10 years. As you can imagine, these expenses can be considerable. In order to have enough money for all this home maintenance, a good rule of thumb is to every year set aside 1 to 4% of the value of your home, depending on the age and build of your home. Buying a home is a big commitment. While the purchase of one's primary residence has helped families pass down wealth in the past, a home purchase can also be a liability with large monthly costs. Avoid overspending. It's easy when you start looking at homes to want to stretch a little for that dream house. If you stretch too far, that dream house could become a nightmare. Spend some time to calculate how much you really want to spend on your next home. Consider how much you have for down payment and savings for other expenses, or the estimated proceeds of selling your current home if you have one. Find something for you and your family can live comfortably, both in terms of the house itself and what it means for your finances. If you are going to stretch, think in advance on what you are willing to cut back on, whether it's fewer vacations, working longer, or contributing less to your children's education. Depending on your situation, consider renting for a little longer to give you a little bit more time to save. I know hearing all this may cause some disappointment. I get it. My sister's first single-family home was a newly remodeled, lovely 4-bedroom in a great area. But then she had a custom home built where she got to choose all the finishes. I would really love to build my own custom home, but not enough to take on the associated costs and the impact it would have on my finances and ultimately my life. I've talked to many physicians who stretched to buy that nicer home and then found themselves in tight financial situations. Ultimately, the higher ceilings, wider staircase, dedicated workout room, and those custom finishings are probably not worth the additional financial stress. There are research studies that show that having a nicer home does increase people's happiness with their home, but doesn't actually increase their overall happiness. And last, but certainly not least, don't buy a primary residence until you know, and I mean absolutely know, that you're going to live there for at least 5 years, and preferably longer. 5 years is really the minimum to be assured that your house will appreciate enough to cover the cost of selling the home. Yes, there are areas where real estate is totally hot and is appreciating at insane rates, but what goes up quickly can also come down quickly. It's much more likely that it's going to take 5, 7, or even 10 years for your home to appreciate enough to cover the cost of selling the home. When you sell your home, you have to cover the closing costs, possibly the buyer's closing cost, your realtor's cost, possibly the buyer's realtor's cost, and any cost to fix up the home to look nice to sell, which could include staging. If there's some reason you have to move, you may be paying a mortgage on an empty house while you're paying rent on a new property to whoever you move to. Purchasing a primary residence is a big decision and not one to be taken lightly. If you would like some help going over all your numbers and figuring out how much you want to actually spend on your next home purchase, that is something I can help you with. If that's of any interest to you, then sign up for a Zoom meeting with me at www.growyourwealthymindset.com. Thank you so much for being a listener of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and colleagues. And now for the disclaimer. I am not a certified financial planner, accountant, or attorney, and nothing I say should be construed as professional investment, tax, or legal advice. This show is primarily for your education and entertainment. I am a physician, but I'm probably not your physician. So if you need any medical advice, please contact your own physician. Thank you.